Welcome to Critical Role Demystified. I'm Mike Christensen, and this is the series where I break down the lessons we can learn as GMs and as players from episodes of Critical Role. Today we're tackling episode 55, Umbrasyl. Before we begin, I just really want to thank one of my viewers, BKBW, for sending me the rulebook to 7th Sea. This is an RPG I've heard great things about for years, and I'm really excited to get a chance to take it for a spin. Thank you so much, BKBW. Now let's get into the episode. The last session ended with the ancient black dragon Umbrasyl flying away from the battle and back toward his lair at the top of the mountain Gatshadow, with Grog dangling off the back of Umbrasyl by the blood axe at the end of the chain of returning, and with Scanlan and a miniaturized Vax still trapped somewhere inside the dragon's body. So as the game opens, Matt jumps right into the action, focusing on the trio currently tangled up with the dragon. Now the rest of the cast wants to try to save their friends, but they would not be able to catch up with the dragon right away. And so Matt needs to resolve what's happening with these three characters first, so he jumps right into what's going on with them. Matt can't find his initiative list from the last game, so he just has those three players reroll for initiative. Umbrasyl flexes his muscles and tries to crush the people inside of him. This is a smart move on Matt's part. I could see the players thinking, hey, why don't we just ride along inside the dragon into the lair and then try to get out and find a place to hide? I don't think that's what those players had in mind, but it was potentially an option. So Matt has Umbrasyl attack them in a roundabout way to help light a fire under their butts. At the end of the last game, Vex had fired an arrow next to Vax, and now Vax is able to get the Dragon Slayer longsword through the hole the arrow made. However, due to the fact that he's restrained, he's rolling with disadvantage on everything he does in here, so he's unable to do any actual damage to the dragon. I saw at least one comment on my last video where someone felt like Matt was being too harsh, specifically regarding Vax's attacks inside Umbrasyl. Like, why couldn't Vax just do some sort of damage by moving the blade around inside the dragon? If you wiggle the sword around inside my body, it doesn't really matter if you're hitting any vital organs, you're still going to do some damage. And I do think Matt was unnecessarily harsh throughout that fight, and arguably a little bit at the beginning of this sequence as well. But I think I'm with Matt on this one. The issue is that Vax doesn't have the maneuverability to position the sword in such a way that he can actually do some substantial damage. That's what the disadvantage is simulating, his inability to get a good angle. I can understand the argument that Umbrasyl's insides should be weaker than his outsides, and so they should have a lower AC, but like, just because that's true about people doesn't mean that that's true about dragons. Actually, is that even true about people? Our outsides are pretty soft as well. Anyway, Umbrasyl's outside is made of hard scales, but he's an ancient dragon. His insides are clearly pretty tough as well. And so ultimately, how tough his guts are is left up to Matt's discretion. And so he says, yeah, the inside is almost as tough as the outside. The word almost tells me that the AC probably isn't quite as high as the outer scales, but not that far off. In fact, a bit later in the scene when Scanlan is trying to escape Umbrasyl's stomach, Matt does say that the stomach lining is easier to hit than the outside of the body, so a 19 hits the inside where it wouldn't hit the outside. So Matt is trying to factor in the different densities of each layer of the body. If it were me, I'd just drop the AC by 2 or 3 for each layer you get further into the body. The real issue here is that this is the same group of players that always says, you definitely lose a hit point whenever Grog just slaps someone, or when one of them just punches another one in the arm or whatever. If that's your mindset toward hit points, then yeah, I can see the argument that Vax should just be able to wiggle the sword around and do some sort of damage. That's why I don't like it when the cast takes a hit point from Grog flicking Vax in the nuts or whatever. It's funny, but it does color the player's perceptions of how easy it would be to do damage by just wiggling the sword. In the scene, Matt does tell Vax that since the Dragon Slayer sword is poking out through the hole, Vax will be able to roll without disadvantage from this angle to try to widen the hole, basically just sawing through the scales. Scanlan transforms into a snake and tries to slide through the hole the immovable rod made, but he fails. There's an opening there, but the layers of skin and muscle and scales are still really pressed up against each other, so it's going to be hard to squeeze through them. Umbrasyl blasts Grog with acid breath, and at this point, since it's been a full round and we're back on Umbrasyl's turn, the cast starts asking when they can try to get into the action. Put us in, coach. Matt points out that the broom isn't fast enough to keep pace, but the players have a counterpoint. Vex resummoned 2 giant eagles at the end of the last game, and they actually have the same flying speed as the dragon. So Pike and Percy climb onto the eagles and fly after the dragon. Vex swings by the horde on her broom and grabs the immovable rod, and then follows, because she's slower than the eagles, so she can go ahead and pick that up on the way. And Keyleth hunkers in place and starts focusing on the gate stone, planning to use it to teleport to Vax's side, which is going to take 1 minute for her to do that. Grog climbs up the chain, but he's not able to get the axe free of Umbrasyl's scales. Vax opens up the wound a bit and sticks his head and dagger arm out of the dragon's body. Meanwhile, Scanlan summons Bigby's hand and tries to fist the wound, but rolls terribly. Umbrasyl shakes Grog off his back, but thankfully, Grog couldn't get that axe free on his turn, so he's once again dangling at the end of the chain. At this point, again, it's been a full round, so the rest of the cast is asking, are you sure we can't do anything? Matt says the eagles are keeping pace and Vex is too far out of range to shoot, but Taliesin points out his range is 400 feet. Matt says, okay, you're just at the edge of your range. Now, the only reason they're so far behind the dragon, like potentially 400 feet behind the dragon, is because Umbrasyl took a turn at the end of the last game, and another turn at the beginning of this game, and then yet another turn before Matt even gave these players a chance to react. In theory, they should be pretty close behind the dragon, maybe 80 feet or 160 feet. I can imagine 250 feet at most if the Eagles had to ready their action to fly once everyone was on their back so they couldn't dash on their first turn. But my guess here is that Matt was torn. On the one hand, he wants to have a cool, dramatic, cinematic scene where the dragon is basically the terrain for the heroes who hitch to ride with him. Umbrasyl's goal is to ditch these leeches and return to his lair, and so Matt is maybe leaning on making that happen, although I suspect if the party was able to kill him off in a sufficiently badass way in this mid-air journey, Matt would be okay with it at this point. On the other hand, his players want to give chase to the dragon, but running chase scenes in D&D is intensely frustrating. I've made a video about chases before and how they're so hard to handle in D&D, and here there's not really a great solution. Like, yeah, here's a quick lesson. Matt should check in on the other players more frequently to make sure they feel like they're participating. But he also knows that what they're trying to do isn't going to be that fun, and especially if they roll for initiative, they're just going to be chasing the dragon, no pun intended, and gaining no ground, with basically just Percy able to take shots from a distance. That being said, that's the scenarios his players are in, and they want to do something, so I think what he should ultimately have done is just put the dragon on the table, put the Eagles on the other side of the table, and said, the Eagles are keeping pace, you're about 200 feet behind the dragon, what would you like to do? Because even if all they do is take shots from a distance, they should still have that option. Involving the other players gives them a chance to try stuff, to at least feel like they're making preparations to help their friends. For example, Percy maneuvers his eagle to fly low, just above the trees, because I think he's hoping he'll be able to catch one of his friends if they fall out of the dragon. That's a weird sentence. And so from this point on, Matt basically says, all you can do is follow, but he does start checking in on them more often to let them know that he hasn't forgotten about them, which is a solid compromise, given the situation they've been in so far. It's not ideal, but given the situation, it's kind of the best solution, which is to say, he improves his communication with his players. Even if I'm wrong and he wasn't reluctant to have the players do certain things, and he really is just trying to rule fairly based on how he envisions the scenario, and the issue is that he just isn't explaining the situation well enough for the players to understand what he's visualizing, so they're not able to operate on the same terms as him. So once again, the solution is to communicate with your players so they can feel like they're participating, which is what he starts to get better at as the scene goes on. Also, I know Matt felt like, well, there's nothing the party can do, but he was wrong. They had summoned eagles, and Percy has an incredible range. So here's another quick lesson for whenever your bad guys need to escape. The players will always feel like they have some way to catch the bad guy. Sometimes they're wrong, but they should still be allowed to try. So rather than ever just saying, oh, and there he goes, he got away, hand the scene back over to your players to see how they respond. It's very likely they'll surprise you and catch up with your monster, but even if they fail, at least they'll know that they genuinely tried, and it won't feel like you pulled one over on them. Jumping back to the scene, at this point, the dragon turns invisible, but Grog is still visible, dangling behind it. When Vax asks, wait, what about me? Am I not visible? Matt answers, no, you still see the dragon. I like that. I like the idea that Vax is basically considered something the dragon is wearing or carrying, so he exists within the magical field of invisibility, or however the spell works. This is also another moment where Matt could have made the dragon invisible to Vax and given Vax disadvantage with the attacks made against his exterior, but he is starting to loosen up his grip on the scene and starting to rule in favor of the players a little bit more. Scanlan is finally able to fist the wound hard enough to get the hand through and jumps out behind it and grabs onto the hand, so he's safely floating in the air, clutching onto Bigby's hand, and watching the dragon vanish as it flies away, and he leaves its field of invisibility. At this point, Umbrasyl does a barrel roll and shakes Vax and Grog loose. Matt narrates that Vax has been launched down directly towards the ground, whereas Grog was on an upward arc dangling by its chain. And thus begins one of my favorite action scenes in Critical Role, as the cast tries to figure out how to solve this problem. At the very top, Liam jumps in with an internal monologue from Vax, which serves as both a check-in on where he stands with his character arc, as well as a prayer to a higher power.
And before you can even get a grapple on, the dragon vanishes from sight, and you're now falling backward.
I'd like to take a chance to say here that when I went into this dragon, I was lost and a wanderer, and as I am shot out its side, I come forth a paladin of the Raven Queen. I have multi-class and leveled up, and the last thing I'm thinking as I shoot out this hole in its side is, if you have any wings to lend me, now is the time.
It seems like Vax leveled up in between sessions thanks to the XP gained from the first half of the dragon fight, although they'll clarify later in the episode that while he got enough XP to level up in between sessions, he doesn't actually level up until they take a short rest later in the session. Let me know in the comments, do you generally allow players to level up in the middle of an adventure, or do they need to take a short rest, or do they need to get back to town and take a long rest before they can spend their XP? I go back and forth. It depends on the circumstances. Even when I'm using milestone leveling, it depends. For example, in this moment, Liam has done a fantastic job at justifying how Vax's changing mindset has unlocked a new connection with the Raven Queen, which helps inform his new multiclass. So I honestly wouldn't mind too much if he just got the new level right here and right now. But also, and obviously far more importantly, Vax has made a decision about where he stands with the Raven Queen. He said as much back in episode 53, and while Keyleth tried to tell him in episode 54 that he didn't have to devote his life to the Raven Queen, that's not how Vax sees it. We'll get more insight into how he feels in a future episode, but this is a pivotal moment for him. And now Matt has a choice. And this is the choice that comes up anytime you have a religious character in your D&D games, and it's one that we are going to be talking about a lot more in the coming months as this subplot plays out. When a D&D character prays, how much do you reward them with some sort of divine intervention? Every GM feels differently about this, and honestly, every player probably feels differently about this. In this case, Matt finds a really nice middle ground, where the prayer to the Raven Queen has a visual component as she responds in some way, but he doesn't commit to any mechanical benefit just yet, preferring to wait to see how the scene plays out, waiting to see if an opportunity will present itself.
As you emerge from the body of Umbrasyl, there is a streak of shadow that scatters into a burst of darkened raven feathers that kind of fill the air around you. You still plummet, but as a nature of your prayer, in that brief moment of understanding, it appears there is some reaction.
It's a nice solution that still does a good job of representing how Vax is the Raven Queen's champion, and she is keeping an eye on him, but doesn't suddenly imbue him with the effects of a high-level cleric or paladin spell. Essentially, at the moment, the Raven Queen is responding, "Heard, Chef." As they fall, Grog tries to make a parachute out of a fancy robe, which is basically Travis's way of acknowledging that Grog has no way of solving the situation. Vax throws a dagger at the dragon, heals himself a bit with lay on hands, and thinks about his mother as he falls through space, which is Liam's way of acknowledging that Vax has no way of solving the situation. What a perfect representation of their characters. Grog does something that seems clever to him because he doesn't have the intellect to process that there is no way it's going to work, and Vax literally just broods through the air. And then we cut to Scanlan, the only person who has a hope of solving this problem. And the way he finds a solution is actually really clever.
Distance between me and them.
Vax is about 20 feet from you. Grog's about 60, 70 feet from you.
Remember, we're going to be going in the same direction
at this point.
So.
They're falling, yeah. Vax will hit the ground first.
Actually,
Higher.
Oh, I see.
He's higher.
Dragon has moved ahead to this point now, as you guys have fallen.
Wait, who is anyone higher than me? No.
I am.
Grog is. Vax
Oh.
is a little bit below you.
Wow. This didn't go well.
Great. We got
Hoping you
this.
could hold on for a minute.
Okay. Because 60 feet is not plummeting speed. I can't catch up to them as they fall.
Right now you could catch up to one of them.
All right. Because Grog is over me, right?
Yeah, Grog is in an arc, so you would have to you'd kind of meet him as you fall.
I'll try to catch him then.
Okay, so you clutch onto Bigby's hand and move as he plummets.
Shit. Wait.
What are you doing? What are you doing, Scanlan?
Do it.
Shit. Vax is below me though.
Yeah.
There's other
One
options.
of them, so it's just a Sophie's choice.
It's a Sophie's choice.
Yeah, but who's on the lowest points?
Yeah, I would go for Grog if he's above me with the
Okay.
hand. Yeah.
Sophie's.
The hand comes forward, sends out to this cupping motion, the fingers below you, eyes closed, clenching tight. All of a sudden, the wind stops, and it's like you're being held by your mother again, a memory you haven't recalled since you were a child. You open your eyes slowly, and you're still above the ground! Holy shit, but there's a giant purple hand around you, and a very freaked out Scanlan clutching the outside.
Look what you did!
Hiya, friend.
Hey.
Shit. Well, we gotta go to Vax. I'll just start moving us slowly down, I guess.
Alright, that was the turn to even get to him and catch him, so.
Great. Then, fuck.
You still have an action if you have anything.
I mean, I can make Grog deaf so he won't hear us die.
That's useful.
That seems like a really good use of it.
I've got Grog.
Tick, tick, tick.
Okay. I'm gonna drop Bigby's hand and polymorph Grog into an eagle.
Okay. So, as you look over at Scanlan, that big look of relief and thank you, he gives you a cursory look as the hand vanishes.
What? What?
I'm holding on to him.
He grabs you real fast, and suddenly, you have feathers! What the shit? And strangely,
Still have a beard.
Giant eagle.
become smarter. As giant eagles have an intelligence of 8.
Wait, come up with a plan.
It's a new day, baby.
It's all, his brain is just geometry.
Keep that good man.
It's like a beautiful mind moment in the middle of the sky. As suddenly you understand the instinct hits you, and you have wings. You feel Scanlan's tiny hands grasping the back of your neck.
And I just yell at him, dive, motherfucker, dive!
Alrighty, Vax, I need you to go ahead and attempt to grab onto the eagle as it swoops beneath you. Go ahead and make a single strength saving throw.
Oh, Jesus.
No, wait, luck. I have one last luck.
This is the time to use it.
Oh, my God.
Oh my god!
21.
Wow. As the eagle swoops underneath you, you reach out. You don't even see it. You're just looking up into the sky as you plummet. The trail of feathers going past as you concentrate on the acceptance you've made to the Raven Queen and the understanding that perhaps if there is a chance to survive, let it be through this leap of faith you've taken in the direction of an entity that you've been so fearful of and scoffed at since she came to you in your dreams. A moment you see the feathers begin to trail off and subside from beneath your cloak, and a voice whispers in your ear and says, left. Without thinking, your hand reaches out, without even seeing, and you just grab the edge of Scanlan's cloak.
Oh no!
As you're dragged behind, you behind.
It's worth it!
Breathe. As the eagle swoops up, you can feel the heartbeat, the blood flowing in the back of your head, and your ears are just hot. Oof, 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 as you just slowly reach over and grab the back of the eagle. Is this Keyleth? You don't know. All you know is Scanlan swooped in, and in this moment of need, seemingly, a prayer was answered.
Now, I love that scene. I think it's genuinely really clever how Sam was able to solve their problem in a single turn and save everybody. It doesn't seem like this is what Matt thought he was going to do when he said that Vex was just 20 feet below Scanlan. It sounded to me like he thought Scanlan was going to move the hand down to catch Vax and then try to aim to catch Grog like he was a fly ball. But Sam did a great job of working to save everyone in the most reliable way possible, rather than leaving it up to chance. Not the last time in this show that he'll be driven by the goal to save everybody in the party. But as far as lessons go, you see how Matt found a narrative excuse to say, hey, here's the answer to your prayers? Matt didn't give Vax any benefit he hadn't already had, like the benefits of a spell or an extra luck token. He also didn't make Vax roll for anything extra. Sometimes he's done that. He's had Vax roll a wisdom check or something. That happened after Vax got knocked unconscious by the Briarwoods. Liam made the emotional speech, and then Matt called for a wisdom check. But that doesn't happen here. Instead, he just looks for the first opportunity to narrate an extremely subtle intercession from a higher power and uses it as flavor for a successful roll. It helps that Vax used a luck point, like that helps justify the narrative a bit. He was going to fail, but then fate turned out to go his way, but that's just one of those cool accidental parallels that crops up a lot during the subplot. And I really like the way Matt handled this moment. I've said this before, but in a world of powerful spells and magic items, I love how subtle the influence of the Raven Queen is. Like I said, this is a topic we're going to be circling a lot across multiple videos over the next few months, but let's just say, this is a level of restraint that I could really stand to learn a lot from for when these moments come up in my own games. So the entire party is safe. But then we cut back to Keyleth, who is still in the form of an Earth Elemental in the middle of the battlefield, and she's been focusing on the Gate Stone, which requires 1 minute of concentration before bringing her to the person who has the other stone, which in this case is Vax. So as the minute of concentration ends, she appears midair in front of Vax and then just falls out of the sky.
You know, it's a good idea when he was still in the dragon.
Yeah, I know. Well, it was.
I came in like
so
a
at about 200 feet up, You continue to plummet.
Oh god.
200 feet?
She's
Yeah.
fine.
That's alright. That's alright. That's alright. That's survivable.
It's 20d6.
20d6.
You'll be fine. What's that?
It's up to you. You want to take
60
it?
points.
It's 60
Yeah.
It's 60
It's
points.
roughly 60 points, which I've got 67 left as this Earth Elemental.
All right, so you're gonna take it.
Plus hers.
So as you,
I'm
this
hang
is gonna
on, wait.
It's gonna look so good.
Wait. If I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it right.
All right, what are you doing?
I'm gonna ball up like a cannonball and light up my hands that I keep forgetting because I didn't know I could do them in elemental form, by the way.
Yes, you
Thought
can.
it was only beast form. And I'm gonna light myself on fire and go Meteor.
All right, you guys watch as the Earth Elemental curls up, forms this streak of flame and smoke behind, and now a plummeting Keyleth meteor goes slamming into the base of the mountain just past you as you pull up from actually impacting at terminal velocity.
I know, trying to leave an impression.
You did.
Keyleth,
No
you
pun
suffer 76 points of bludgeoning damage upon
Of Jor-El
impact.
damage.
Now, we could talk about how Marisha was, pun intended, caught between a rock and a hard place. She had no wild shapes left, so she can't become an eagle or an air elemental to halt her fall. And if she wants to use a spell to save her life or try to hitch a ride on an eagle grog, she'd have to drop the form anyway, which means she would still lose those hit points from the earth elemental. So since the math is not that severe, she just decided to take the hit and ride it out as the earth elemental to basically get the last of her money's worth out of that wild shape. We could talk about how falls from great heights have become a really useful metric for how powerful these characters have become, because clearly she knows she can survive this fall because she's so high level. And maybe we could talk about how this might feed into some confidence that will carry over into future scenarios. But honestly, I just played that clip because the term Jor-El damage makes me laugh so hard every time. But with that, the party converges at the base of the mountain, and they are finally safe and sound on the ground. However, at this exact moment, an elderly Goliath woman emerges from the edge of the bramblewood. She's missing an eye and missing her left arm, Vecna, which ends at the forearm. She walks with a quarterstaff etched with runes as a walking stick. At this point, they bring out their guest. It's Chris Perkins, the lead story guy at Wizards of the Coast. Matt, you're doing it! You're introducing the guest star at the earliest reasonable point in the game. Chris's character introduces herself as Shale, and Matt tells Grog that Shale has been a part of the tribe for a long time, but she's often cast to the side thanks to her age, and she's not considered a powerful fighter because she's slow and frail and she lost an arm in an avalanche years ago. Chris improvises that Shale remembers Grog and says he was once the runt of the herd. Shale says she was part of a scouting party that went to check out Umbrasyl's lair, but she wasn't able to keep up, so she fell behind. By the time she caught up with them, they were all dead.
How did you survive?
I was slow and stupid. I shouldn't have gone at all. I couldn't keep up with them. By the time I got to them, they were corpses.
Sound like an excellent addition to our team.
Now, that's a joke, but it does kind of convey something really important about Shale and how Chris Perkins created her. Because Chris Perkins has no desire to steal the thunder from any of the other players. So he created someone who is canonically old and weak and slow, whose best fighting days are behind them, and who is disregarded by everyone else in the herd. So she's willing to help in battle, but she's not likely to steal anyone's kills. She's also more than willing to die in battle with the dragon, which helps disincentivize the other players from spending high-level healing or buff spells on her. And this is another subject we're going to come back to in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk about what makes a great guest player at a D&D game, particularly looking at this guest star and the next one who appears on the show in the following episode. But to pull back the curtain a bit, guest players usually have one of two goals: to be a badass, or to make the other players feel badass. In this case, Chris's goal is absolutely clear. He has no need to come in and be a badass, so his goal is to prop up the other players. Now, the party's trying to figure out how to get up the mountain quickly. The longer they wait, the more the dragon will heal, and Matt confirms to Vex that dragons can heal naturally, but they also tend to have some sort of reserves to help them get back up to full strength quickly, such as a bunch of healing potions. The fastest way up would be for Keyleth to scry on the mountain, looking for a tree to transport through, and then teleporting all of them up the mountain. That would take about 10 minutes, and I get the sense that Matt kind of assumes this is what they're going to do, but the downside of this strategy is that Keyleth would then be tapped out of a couple of very powerful spells. She's willing to do that if that's the best plan, but they want to talk it through a bit. Option B is to use the eagles to fly up the mountain, which would take time as well. All told, it would be an hour and a half for the two eagles to fly up, drop some people off, fly back down and pick more people up, and then fly up the mountain. But Vex can just conjure two more eagles rather than have them fly back down, and this plan also means that they get to take a short rest, since at some point, everybody has to sit around for about 30 to 40 minutes waiting for the rest of the group to finish their flight. So they're going to take their short rest while they get up to the top of the mountain. And then they're going to finish this. They're going to hunt down Umbrasyl. Now, Grog brings up a good point. The reason they ambushed the dragon at the Horde drop-off point was because they thought the dragon's lair was a death trap. Now they're going back to that plan, except they no longer have the entire herd of storms at their back. The others argue that they're pressing their advantage and taking advantage of the fact that the dragon is hurt, but Grog points out, no, the dragon is going to heal up, Matt just said so. But Sam makes the most compelling argument of all.
What are we gonna do today with Chris Perkins? Talk or go fucking kill a dragon?
Would you like a tour of Whitestone? It's really lovely this time of year.
Let's go. I'm judging you.
Okay, Phil.
This is one of the great benefits of having guest players at your D&D table. It helps light a fire under the players' asses. Now, the last time Critical Role had a guest star, there was a bit of controversy around one of the players stealing a magic item from that character. So here, Chris makes sure the other players know exactly how he feels about the party potentially getting their hands on his gear.
Now, if I don't survive, loves, I do have some magic on me.
Oh.
So
What
this
kind of
staff
magic?
has runes. You can scratch them off and magical things will appear.
It's not planned for you to die, all right?
And this horn, if you blow it real loud, it will let out a tremendous thunder. Could bring down the entire cave.
Again, I don't think you should be planning for your own death.
Take that
very
horn.
useful
I'll take the horn.
information.
Oh,
Well, it
wait,
might
you can use the
explode.
horn. All right.
It might explode.
It's a little unstable.
Scanlan, you should take the horn.
She's not dead yet.
I'm not
Say
dead
when
yet.
she dies. If she dies.
We're not gonna divvy up her stuff. That's bad luck.
She's bequeathing it to you in her will.
And this pendant here, which looks like a dragon tooth, it's a dragon tooth. And if you wear it, it will close your wounds.
Oh.
Again, I think this comes from the idea that Chris has no interest in upstaging anybody. He's got no issues with Shale dying in battle and the party looting her corpse. Shale also doesn't talk about how she wants to kill the dragon. She talks about how badass Grog will be when he kills the dragon.
It's your destiny to fight the dragon, Grog.
Wait, what? What was that,
true?
Shale? Is that true? Hang
It's
on.
not true.
They take a short rest and go to their break, and when they come back, Matt tells us that Vax and Grog just leveled up to 14 over the break, as they took their short rest. As you can see, the party is leveling up asynchronously, and they have to take some sort of rest before leveling up. Matt will wind up abandoning XP leveling when they reach Campaign 2 in favor of milestone leveling. During their short rest, Vax also took back all of his magical gear and gave the Dragon Slayer longsword back to Percy. However, he's still going to be shrunk down for another 2 hours, which is just very funny. They hike up the last distance to reach the cave, and they find 2 entrances, one large and one small. Keyleth scries inside the cave to see what she can figure out. She's able to get a sense of the layout, and she sees pools of acid inside the lair. She doesn't see Umbrasyl, but she hears him breathing heavily. Vax calls through the smaller hole and just finds a dead end, featuring a long-gone campsite of some explorers who were trying to find some previous monster who had dwelled in Gat Shadow, as Umbrasyl is by far not the first wicked creature to make its lair here. They climb alongside the edge of the mountain, Nathan Drake style, to reach the larger entrance into the lair itself. Once they reach the entrance, they see 2 large rocks that don't naturally belong to the cave, set on either side of the walls of the entrance cavern. The cast rolls a bunch of Arcana checks, but they all roll terribly, so all they know is that there's old magic on these rocks. Most likely it's a trap or an alarm that will activate when they cross between the rocks, but they can't at all determine the nature of the magic. So because they have no idea what these rocks do, and they don't want to spend the last of Pike's spell slots on dispelling the magic, Keyleth just uses a spell to create a tunnel behind one of the rocks, so they can just avoid them entirely. They enter the lair and hear this steady breathing from some unseen source. Vax petitions Vex to allow him to go in solo, to try to hit it, and then retreat. He feels like that's the best strategy, since if he can catch the dragon unaware, he can do a bunch of damage and then retreat. Vex hates this plan, but as we've discussed before, the party also knows that the rogue is the one best suited to solo stealth missions, and Vax specifically gets a bunch of extra damage if he can attack an unsuspecting target before the fight begins. So Vex reluctantly agrees to give Vax a 1-minute head start. He makes his way around the perimeter of the dungeon, and eventually, in the far corner, he literally walks right into the invisible dragon. And Matt calls for an initiative roll, for now, just from Vax, to see if he can stab the dragon before anything else happens. Umbrasyl beats Vax in initiative, but Vax does say Jenga into his earpiece, sending Vex into the cavern. Matt allows this, but doesn't ask for initiative rolls from anyone else in the party just yet. The dragon unloads attacks, hitting Vax only once thanks to Vax's Cloak of Displacement and very high AC. And on his turn, Vax just waits until his friends are right up alongside it so he can get his sneak attack damage. That is a risky maneuver, and one that ultimately does not pay off, since none of his friends can actually cross across the cave in a single turn. At this point, Matt calls for everyone else to roll for initiative, and we're just going to cover some of the highlights. The first round mostly features the party just trying to get deeper into the cavern, let alone trying to land a hit on an invisible foe. The entire cave is probably at least 120 feet across, so throughout the fight there are going to be a lot of turns wasted on just crossing from one side of the cave to the other. Umbrasyl maintains his invisibility while attacking. He's clearly got some homebrew version of greater invisibility that lasts longer than 1 minute, which is honestly totally fine. He's an ancient dragon. He should be able to do awesome stuff. Keyleth tries to catch him with Fairy Fire, but he spends his third and final legendary resistance, negating it. Eventually, they do enough damage to break his concentration, and he reveals himself. Umbrasyl also has layer actions. In the first round, he conjures an insect swarm. In the second round, the acid pools rise up and splash out in a radius and damage people. Scanlan is able to hit Umbrasyl with Stinking Cloud, which means the dragon has spent his entire action coughing.
I'm gonna guiding bolt him right up the butt.
Ashley rolls a natural 20 and deals 50 radiant damage with her Holy Enema. Scanlan uses Cutting Words, and when your enemy is doing 20 plus damage or even 40 plus damage with each attack, what is the benefit of Cutting Words? Well, it gives Umbrasyl disadvantage on the next saving throw, and Scanlan goes right before Keyleth. So when she tries Fairy Fire again, the disadvantage makes it land, giving everyone else advantage on attacks against him. Keyleth also becomes a water elemental because they have resistance to acid damage, including resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Percy unloads on the dragon with the Dragon Slayer Longsword, taking his action surge, hitting with all 6 attacks, and rolling 2 natural 20s in the process. However, Umbrasyl is still up, and Matt points out, the dragon healed while you rested. He says, you let him rest, which really confirms that I think he thought they were going to teleport up the mountain, or at least it's trying to impress on them the importance of actually pressing your advantage when you're in a situation like this. This is a lesson the party will learn well from, as we'll see much later in this arc. When they're presented with a similar opportunity, they're going to try to take it. The next layer action creates a sphere of magical darkness that obscures the vision of everyone close to Umbrasyl, although he is larger than the Dome of Darkness, so he's a bit visible for the folks outside the bubble, like Vex and Vax. Then on his turn, Umbrasyl flies away, provoking a bunch of opportunity attacks, but he's able to move to the other side of the cave and blast his attackers with Acid Breath once again. Now, this is a good strategy, but I have to say I'm not really impressed by these layer actions. They don't really feel cohesive in any way. I mean, if Matt had described the room as smelling rancid, and so that's why there are a bunch of insects in a swarm, or if he'd flavored that layer action as Umbrasyl casting a spell, then that would better fit the combat thematically. Right now, they just seem kind of random, aside from the acid pool splashing up. But this is something that I think Matt is going to get a little bit better about, although that's just from my memory. We'll see if I'm right about that as the story arc continues. Also, during that turn, as Umbrasyl flew away, they had a whole sequence where Scanlan cast a spell as a reaction, and Matt went to look it up to make sure that's how it works, which it is because Scanlan has the Warcaster feat, but Chris Perkins is just sitting, saying nothing, because it's absolutely not his job to tell them how the rules work for the game that he helped design. Respect, Chris Perkins. Respect. Everyone else has spent their turns dashing to just even try to reach Umbrasyl. He's just that far away, just enough to be a pain in the ass for everybody. But Grog instead walks to Bigby's hand, and then Scanlan commands the hand to bring Grog to Umbrasyl's head, which is a good strategy. Percy shoots it some more, and Shale does land a single smack on it, but no one else is able to get a hit in. Umbrasyl resummons the darkness around him, and then, because Matt's rolling really well, Umbrasyl's breath recharges yet again, and he blasts everyone who's been dashing to catch up with him, so now they're almost all in a row in front of him. Trinket and Percy go unconscious and start dissolving, but Grog gets a retaliation strike when he gets attacked, and he gets the how do you want to do this? He cleaves Umbrasyl's face and brings the beast down, and the other party members rush to heal Trinket and Percy. Now, even though Chris Perkins seemingly designed his character to be completely incapable of stealing the thunder of the other players, Matt still turns to Chris and gives Shale some closure.
As you stand there, Shale, watching the dragon fall as Grog Strongjaw, the once runt of the herd of storms, slams the blade over and over again into the dragon's head. A little part of you is a little jealous, and another part proud, and a little sad that this was not the time for you to lose your life in battle against a mighty dragon.
Shale.
Can you believe it?
Shale jumps into acid.
Yeah.
Just walks in.
Dissolves.
Shale gives her dragon tooth necklace to Grog, which doubles the hit points regained by spending hit dice on a short rest. They look for traps and they start discussing all the wealth in the Horde, though Matt does say they'll have to do a proper inventory in the next session since it's 11:20 at night and there's a lot of stuff here. The party also confirms, reluctantly for some of them, that they will return most of this gold to Western. Matt also confirms that this is small for a dragon sword, especially for an ancient dragon, and implies that this was probably either a temporary layer or this is going to be his new layer, but all or maybe most of the previous Horde hadn't been transferred over yet. That's a nice way for Matt to narratively give his players access to the Horde of an ancient dragon, but not actually give them a huge windfall of wealth and magic items and potions or whatever. It's a nice way to have his cake and eat it too. They harvest some material from the dragon's corpse, but Matt confirms this is also going to take some time, so they decide they're just going to camp here for the night. They'll create the mansion in the smaller dead-end cave, so any dragons who might try to look in on this cave from afar with magical means won't see the party during the night.
Once we get to the mansion, Shale will bid the group farewell and head down to Western to let the rest of the herd know what's happened, about the great triumph of the bearded king.
Yeah.
As you come down and
I'm killed by now, Bear.
ravaged and eaten horribly in the Bramblewood, never to be seen again.
Nobody hears the tale of the bearded king.
Okay, but in truth, Shale does meet up with the rest of the herd, all 12 remaining members, and tells them that the dragon is dead. Xanror says the herd of storms is also dead, but Shale points out there are other herds. Xanror agrees and says maybe it's time for them to go join up with another herd, like maybe the River Maw who left them the day before. Regardless of which herd they join, it's time to find another life. A quiet life. No more pillaging. Time to raise their children. I think that this reference to finding someplace ideally suited to raise children is very deliberate, because Matt is implying that Xanror wants to break the cycle of toxicity that Kevdak represented. In fact, zooming out and looking at the scope of this final scene, Matt is providing some closure for the Herd of Storms, so that they don't continue to be a major factor or faction in the world. And given the incredible losses they just endured, I think that is a perfectly reasonable new direction for Xanror and the rest of his herd. After all, from a pure numbers game, this is probably the worst couple of days the Herd of Storms has ever had. They've lost their leader and most of their members in just a couple days. But Matt does a nice job of both framing this as a new beginning for the herd and a chance to tell the players, hey look, don't worry, the Herd of Storms won't be out wandering Tal'Dorei, raiding and pillaging. They're done. And that is something that, honestly, most of the players probably hadn't given that much thought to. But I wouldn't be surprised if Matt has had this conclusion in his back pocket for a while. However, it's also possible that he only found the solution when Shale traveled back down the mountain alone and had her one-on-one with Xanror. After all, Shale is the first one to say there are other herds. Now, I'm sure Matt planned to have some sort of send-off between Xanror and Vox Machina once the party came back down from the mountain, but the way this played out, it kind of works better to just send them off with just Shale. After all, Shale says that Kevdak had been ignoring her advice for years, and here, Xanror says the herd could use Shale's knowledge. So Matt is essentially framing this epilogue to present Shale as the new Greenbeard, the elder advisor to the current Thunderlord. And that just came from Matt honoring Chris's contributions and using the Herd of Storms to give him a proper send-off. Like I said, we're going to be talking more about great guest players in the next couple of weeks, but just keep Shale in the back of your mind when we get there. Because when it comes to guest stars who prop up the members of Vox Machina and give them a chance to shine, Chris Perkins as Shale is right up there with the best of them. And as Shale and the Herd of Storms ride off into the sunset, they wrap up the episode, and Matt gives some narration to help summarize where they are in their journey.
All right, well, we'll pick this back up again next week on Thursday to see what the next adventure holds for Vox Machina, now that one of the 4 conclave remaining have fallen. I can tell you, at the death of one dragon, I doubt the others, upon hearing of it, will be anywhere near as careless as Umbrasyl was. But there are more vestiges to find, more allies to acquire. Yes. Who knows whether dangers lie in the realms of Tal'Dorei and beyond, outside of the Conclave's threat. We shall see in weeks to come. Guys, thank you so much for staying up with us tonight. Rest well.
Back, please.
And, is it Thursday yet?
Yeah.
See you guys next week.
Now this is interesting, because Matt basically tells the players, hey, the scenario you just encountered, where Umbrasyl is collecting a horde every few days, and you can ambush him with this massive trap the next time he comes to collect the gold, that's not going to happen again. Next time, you'll have to come up with a new strategy. And I actually think this is a great move, both from a GMing perspective and from a storytelling perspective. This is one of those scenarios where, if you let them, the players will prep the fun out of the game. Players want to go with the same solutions they've found before, because players generally like to minimize risk. If it ain't broke, why fix it? Well, the reason why is the same reason why Doctor Strange doesn't keep catching his enemies in time loops, or why Ant-Man doesn't keep shrinking his enemies into a subatomic level, or why the Ghostbusters don't keep crossing the streams at the end of every movie. Except they did actually do that again at least once, but that time it didn't work. Because it's actually not very satisfying for your heroes to solve every problem the exact same way over and over again. So Matt basically tells them now, hey, be ready to adapt, because the next situation you find one of the dragons in will not be the same. Matt also reminds them that there are more vestiges to find and more allies to recruit, which helps remind them that they don't have to jump right into attacking Voragol or Raishan or even Thordak. They have the freedom to go wherever they'd like. And he reminds them that there are going to be other dangers as well, which may not be affiliated with the dragons at all. This is all foreshadowing for the next couple of story arcs. Now, obviously, Matt and his players are very narrative-focused players, and especially so considering that they are broadcasting their game as a TV show. So Matt is using this speech to basically prepare the players for their next story arc, which, in his mind, probably starts with the next episode. Obviously, this is still part of the Chroma Conclave arc, but this is the first section of the Chroma Conclave arc can be neatly wrapped up with the death of Umbrasyl. After all, this is the first member of the Chroma Conclave they've killed since the attack on Amon, and it changes how the players are going to engage with the storyline. This is confirmed by the fact that the team retroactively went back and changed the color of the episode thumbnails to separate them into distinct story arcs, and this section ends with the party's time in Western. The second season of the animated series also ends with Umbrasyl's death. Basically, this is a big pivotal moment that helps reframe the rest of the Chroma Conclave arc, because it provides the first major victory in killing a dragon and in getting a vestige from a powerful foe who had their hands on them, or in them, as was the case with Thordak. And they've also rescued Western, which is another major victory. They've liberated one of the cities that has been conquered by the Conclave. And so, again, it sounds like Matt is trying to gas his players up and prepare them to start thinking about where they want to go in the next session. However, in the final moments of the game, the players ask Sandlin if he has a hot spring in his mansion. So, you know what that means. Time for a sauna episode. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back in 2 weeks to discuss episode 56, Hope. This episode features the cast taking a break to decompress from the Western arc, count their gold, and blow off some steam in a literal sauna. And we're going to find out that while Matt described the end of this game as if he were right about the launch of the next story arc, his players had other plans. We're going to have a lot to talk about, so make sure to come back for that video in 2 weeks. But I've also got some other great videos coming up in between now and then, so make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to stay up to date with all those videos. If you want to help support the channel, consider joining my Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Join my Discord to hang out with a bunch of other awesome people, and sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date with my latest news. Click here for my video about whether or not it matters that the cast of Critical Role doesn't always know the rules for D&D. Until next time, play fair and have fun.